Okay, good afternoon. This is the Plan Prince George's 2035 Implementation and Infrastructure Task Force. Today is October 28th, 2024. Looks like we're just shy of a quorum, so we will move forward with our briefing. We had minutes to adopt. If we get one more person, we can go back to that. Our minutes of June 10th and September, was it 26th? 16th. So to recap the last meeting, which was covered in the minutes, we had a briefing from Park and Planning on progress that had been made to date. Then we had discussion on infrastructure. Talked about the task force review website and the materials posted. We've highlighted current plans that are in progress to implement Plan 2035 and the Climate Action Plan. And hopefully we'll be able to adopt these minutes in due course. For today, we have a presentation on data collection reports for FY 2025 that I guess we can expect. These are in process. I guess we're already in FY 25. So things are rolling along. I'll turn it over to Ms. Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. Lakeisha Hall, Planning Director for Prince George's County. So what we're doing is going to recap about 5 or so reports that our department has been doing this calendar year that's going into this fiscal year. We're also going to share on, what our strategy is moving forward. These reports are either required by state law, they're required either by directives of county council, or they're part of other requests from other departments. So if we can go ahead and cue the PowerPoint, then I think we'll be good to go. Oh, perfect. Okay. So this is going to be a quick walkthrough. So all of the data reports that we're talking about are going to be posted on our website, or they'll shortly thereafter going to the website. We provided a presentation to the planning board a couple weeks ago as well. So wanted to make sure you guys were privy as well to what we're doing. So just to give you an idea of what the reports we currently have in the queue, and let me see if this is advancing. Okay. Oh, okay, there it is. All right, so just to give you guys an idea of what we're going to talk about at a high level today are the following reports. The Planning Data Journal and Net Migration Report. This is done every year where we talk about the data that we receive from the census. So just going to go over that slide very quickly. Employment Trends and Dynamics, Prince George's County, Maryland, 2011 to 2021. That was requested by Economic Development Department. The 2023 Annual Report on Growth in Prince George's County, that's required by the state. We also provide updates regularly on townhouses, and so we have the 2023 report. We also have the Pupil Yield Factors and School Clusters report, which was required by County Council. Retail, office, industrial, and institutional development, that was required or requested at the Economic Development Department request. And then we have another report coming up soon, and we also want to open up to this committee to get any direction or guidance on any future reports that they're interested in us doing. So the first one, the Planning Data Journal on net migration. So what we did was just put together a screenshot of what the report looks like. On the left side, highlights very high level some of the data that we were able to pull together. A lot of this work, and I'll go remiss if I didn't mention, I have a wonderful team in my information and technology group. They put together a lot of this information, so a lot of great sources are also used. So just to give you an idea, the net migration, we saw that in 2020, it was a lot higher than in 2010. And so we saw that 8,000 persons in 2020 was net migrating in versus 6,000 in 2010, respectively. The other thing we saw is that people were moving to the county from another state than from the county to another state. So we saw a lot of people coming into this county versus moving out of the county in the same ratio. People moving out of the county to another Maryland county exceeded those moving into the county. So that's some of the data that you'll see. I know it seems a little cobbled, but we're trying to see the trends of where people are moving in and out of the county within the respective region or in another state. And then lastly, there was over 7,000 people who moved into the county from abroad in 2010. And then we saw in 2020, 7,300 people moving into the county as well. So I'll pause and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm trying to remember back to the census, but I thought we had like 930 or 40,000 people reported in the census. Am I wrong on that?
I would have to verify. So, as you know, the census is done every 10 years. And so I think sometimes what we do, we look at the data a little bit more closely. But let me confirm on that. We can follow up at a later date. But the population at right now that we currently have is 899,845 as of 2020. And these are also tied to the American Community Survey as well.
Okay, because I think most council members believe we have a lot more than that because we have a lot of undocumented residents. And is this coordinated through employment statistics? Is that part of it?
I believe the American Community Survey does have a list of methodology that they use to verify that. So it depends on the source of how that number comes together. But like I said, back in 2020, that was the number that we have from the census.
Yeah, one of the things that I recall hearing is that we've lost a lot of, and this is mentioned on the, I guess I'll call it the third bullet down. People moving out of the county to another county exceeded those moving in from another county. But we don't have does the report give a more detailed look at how many people that is?
Yes, and so that's the census track that information, and so we do have that as part of that journal. But we don't go into the specific details per se, but we do show some of those trends.
Now, where can we find this on the Park and Planning website?
So pgplanning.org is the Park and Planning website. We do have a publications tab that we can find all of the reports that's being talked about today under that tab.
I've been to that tab so many times.
Yes, you have.
It's a great tab.
And you can download the PDF. So
I do.
these documents are very, very attractively and easy to follow.
Anybody else have a question about this? Moving on.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. The second report is the employment trends and dynamics Prince George's County from 2011 to 2021. And so we released this earlier this year. And so keeping in mind, things can always fluctuate after we release it, but the data we pull from multiple sources. And so this also is a really awesome report just to kind of give a snapshot over a 10-year period of how things are moving forward from a data standpoint. And like I said, our colleagues and our wonderful friends in economic development, they use this as well as part of their efforts. All right, the third report that we currently released, this is required by state. And so this report, we try our efforts to try to get it out as soon as we can. It talks about basically the residential and non-residential development in Prince George's County. So we look at the year that that is previous to see some of those trends. And like I said, once again, this report is provided online as required by state. The next report is the 2023 Townhouse Report. This report, there's 3 bullet points that just want to touch at a very high level. So we look at the inventory timing, prices, values, and location of townhouses throughout the county. We also use this to help to support legislative and regulatory mechanisms. And then also we use this as a reference document in analyzing the trends on townhouses and financial characteristics. And so this one, like I said, once again, is provided on our website for you to peruse at your leisure. The next report is the pupil yield factors in school clusters. And so this report looks at the regulatory review process of how we're looking at yield factors as part of our preliminary plans for subdivision. And so as you guys know, we have thresholds and markers. And so it's important that we see how this effort is lining up to how subdivisions are impacted by public schools and further resources that may be needed. So this report was released earlier this year. And so once again, it's provided online.
Question about that?
Sure.
Historically, there's been, I'll say my understanding, which I've heard from a lot of people, is there's been tension between the school system and Park and Planning about the pupil yield. I think they tried to smooth that over in the past few years, but what is the methodology that goes into producing this?
So once again, we just pull the data that we currently have available that the school board provides, and also some of the other data that we can pull from the census. I can't speak about any issues or miscommunication in the past, but our goal is to try to make sure that we work very close with our partners in aligning up our efforts.
Is there any sort of corroboration? Like the school system says that we have so many students per type of household or neighborhood. How does Park and Planning corroborate that? Because I remember there used to be folks on the Park and Planning side who did advocacy feeling like they weren't getting the data that they needed. So I'm not sure where things stand.
Yes, and so the thing about all of our reports, we make sure we have the data sources to justify our trends and our projections. And so our goal is to make sure we're aligning our efforts with the school board. And so if there is a disconnect, especially in this report, if anyone sees any disconnect, then we're more than happy to address that in a future report.
It's usually hard to determine because the issue has always been the school system being very reluctant to provide detailed level information, broad information maybe, but details so that you can really look at it. I remember when we did high school capacity task force back in 2007, we couldn't get data from the school system. Even though we're the county council, they wouldn't give us the information that we needed. We had consultants who do that as a business, national experts, and it was impossible to get the data. So I know that from that discussion, 15 years ago, but even in more recent years. So I'm just curious as to how that's working. I'm hearing you kind of say you think things are good, but I'm not hearing.
Well, I could just only go by what the information we currently have, but if they do want to challenge or rebuttal any of our information, I'm open for that as part of the sources that we're refreshing. And I do have an upcoming coordination meeting with the school system, so I'm hoping to see what I can do to smooth out anything that was not clear in the past.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay. Moving right along to the next report. Retail, office, industrial, and institutional development. So this one's a couple years behind. I really like this report a lot because it really shows where we are in regards to this type of development pattern in not only our region, but also across the country. And so CoStar is one of the leaders in real estate trends. And so we really are happy to be able to work with economic development and showing some of the larger companies that have stayed here, what they're trying to do and redevelop. So this report, which I read a couple weeks ago over the weekend, it's very, very detailed and comprehensive in some of the trends. And this is interesting because, with us leaving the pandemic, some of these trends are going to help to influence how we move forward in those different industries. And so then the last slide just kind of gives you a snapshot of where we are as a department with these reports pending and coming moving forward. I do want to offer an opportunity for 2025 if there are some reports that you want us to look at, further emphasizing and implementing Plan 2035. Happy to listen to that, those recommendations, but we're hoping to touch on the office market characteristics and trends, and then also get population, housing, and employment survey. So those two right now are in the works. And then we have series that we're really excited about to see the people of the Hispanic and Latino origin, seeing how that data series can also be released, population 65 and older, and persons with disabilities. So those are upcoming reports that we're hoping to be able to release soon. And I'm open for any questions or any input that you guys have at this time.
Questions? Input?
I don't know if this is appropriate.
Yeah.
Oh, can we ask about like agritourism or a report on those sort of trends?
I can definitely follow up. So when you talk about agritourism, is it more specific to urban or rural or both?
Both.
Both, okay. And we've been recently doing a lot of site visits in our department. So last week or a couple weeks ago, a lot of us spent a half a day touring some of these wonderful farmlands. So definitely can look further into that.
Yes, thank you for this report. I'm wondering with the retail, office, industrial, and institutional development. So, what insights does that kind of report provide for us? Obviously, it's county-wide, but what is it actually telling us?
So without giving too much of the details away, because I don't want to steal the thunder of the report,
Okay.
But it is available for perusing. The big thing is that we have a lot of areas like we have strip malls and we have areas that have been dated, and so a lot of these larger employers or employees that are looking for sites We're looking at what exactly are those trends, what are they interested in regarding to moving and staying and retaining here. What are the type of industries that are here now that are able to be catalysts for others? So it's just those kind of seeing how that all works together, incubator spaces, things like that. And then what other places that are in other counties can benefit from also locating or co-locating here.
Okay. I mean, what's particularly interesting to me, because I work with the Purple Line Corridor Coalition, and there's a lot of strip mall sites from New Carrollton all the way to the county line that we're both excited about and concerned about the kind of redevelopment that will happen and the potential displacement. So,
And then we also see our connection to a lot of our federal agencies. We have over 15 federal agencies here in Prince George's County. So how do we also start to leverage some of that opportunity, because we have workforce that are here every single day. So definitely being mindful of the Purple Line impacts as well.
One of the things we've talked about, I don't see it on here, maybe it's within one of the reports, is the characteristics of, I guess, the cost of development. We've talked about what's the benefit of doing single-family detached, townhouse, multifamily in terms of revenues versus expenditures. We've talked about this a number of times, and my understanding there was a consultant that the Park and Planning had hired to look at this. Is that one of the ones on the list that I'm not understanding?
So I will look over to my team. I'm not sure if it's going to touch on any other studies or reports that we're working on, or if it's covered under a previous effort.
So that study is underway by Park and Planning. I think that RFP went out a few months ago, and we're doing the preliminary work with the consultant that was chosen at this time, and they will be working on that, I think about 12 to 15,
12 months.
about 12 months, and we should have that report produced by our staff and the consultant, and it'll be that cost benefit analysis that you're referring to.
Is there a reason why it's not listed here? We don't consider it the same as these reports or research projects?
So this was something that is covering FY25. So this report that he's referring to is not going to fall within that window. So that would be more like
It
the
won't be
FY26.
completed within the window, but it's okay.
Yeah. So that's something that, because we haven't even started the work yet, it's not something that we want to put down here as of yet.
Gotcha.
But is that the fiscal impact study? Yeah. So we're working a lot offline on what that looks like, but we want to make sure we have something that we can show you before proceeding.
Got it. I know it's something that's been a high priority for much of the council, but so it's moving a little slower than we'd like, but I guess it is what it is. In terms of the CoStar study, I guess that's the retail, office, industrial. One of the questions that we had back in 2019, and I know I think they used CoStar for this, Tony might remember, was what is the breakdown of the housing stock in Prince George's County? Because we always hear about the region needs more affordable housing, and the question was, well, how much affordable housing do we already have based on the regional averages? And staff did some work with what data they had and came out with some rough numbers that showed that we had very substantial percentage of the housing stock, whether it was townhouse or multifamily, was considered affordable. They're a very high percentage. But that information is dated, and Park and Play was pretty clear that the data was rough, because it wasn't the data that you needed wasn't necessarily right there at your fingertips. So I guess my question is, in doing this is retail, office, industrial. It's really not getting into residential.
Yeah.
But is that something that either can be added as a report?
So I want to clarify, we do have studies and then we have reports. So these reports are done in-house. And so what I'm hearing you say, Chair, is that, there are some studies that we're working on with consultants that we can probably do a deeper dive as part of those work program and scopes. We do have the missing middle housing study that's coming up hopefully very soon. That one is going to have a consultant, and a lot of those areas that you touched on would be part of that discussion, and looking at some of those benchmarks and some of those data sources. So I just want to clarify, we do have studies and then we have reports.
Okay, that's what I thought. So
Yeah, so that will
So
be separate, but I'm more than happy to make sure that we have that available once that does proceed.
apparently I'm more interested in studies.
That's fine.
And last on the list, there's been a lot of discussion on this task force in particular about adequate public facilities analysis, and we've talked about the need to modernize. And it's my impression that staff was either themselves or in conjunction with consultants working or going to be working on analysis of how does our APF standards and way of doing business work. A lot of you've heard, I think, from the residents on the task force that they don't feel that it's worked very well over the years. So is that something that's a study that's in process?
So I'll turn it over to Ms. Scholler to touch on that one because I know that's one of her favorite topics.
Yes, my favorite topic.
I did this just for her.
Katina Schollers with the countywide planning of the planning department. Yes, as part of that fiscal impact study, adequate public facilities is going to be part of what our consultant is going to be looking into, not just the history and the legislation and how it's evolved over years, but also the monetary part of it as far as mitigation. And it involves not only just police and fire, but it's going to be looking at schools, park adequacy as well. That is sort of the jump start to get into it. We're going to know more from that as to if we can even should take a more deeper dive. Is it going to inform us as to whether or not there should be a reform to adequacy? We're going to be looking at performance, the standards, as well as the performance of that. And how has that impacted, or what effect has that had on growth in the county? So yes, it's going to be like a preliminary dive into it, and then we will look at that to determine if we need to continue a further studying APFO in this county. That answer your question?
Yes. When do you expect to have something?
This is part of the fiscal impact study.
Oh, okay.
Yes, this is one of the elements that will be part of the fiscal impact study. So they're not just looking at housing; they're also looking at transportation. I mean, all APFO. I forgot to say that because transportation is a big part of it as well as the developer funded programs as part of those, as well as any mitigation fees that are associated with it. So they're going to be looking at the whole gamut of the APFO ordinance.
Sounds good. Anyone else? Yes.
Does any of these reports cover aging in place, or whether or not there are enough housing units to allow people to age in place?
So I would like to continue to talk about the missing middle housing study as a way for us to talk about that effort, because aging in place is super important in how we're looking at the different housing typology and inventory. And so that's something that Ms. Green, I really want to make sure our consultants do a deeper dive on that. And that's going to be something that once we do have a draft on hand, and Tony's Felt's team is going to be leading that effort, we really want to make sure everyone is involved and provide feedback. But that would fall under a study that we would move forward, hopefully sometime middle part to late next year. Perfect.
Okay, great. I think we're ready to move on to the next topic, which is the results from the survey requesting ideas for future agenda items. And Ms. Hightower.
Ms. Gomez is going to go over those with Board's Chair. Thank you.
Great.
Good afternoon. I'm gonna present a recap of. Do you see it work? Oh, it's loading. Okay, I thought it was on my end. I had enough to fix it. So, while this is loading, staff sent an email to the members of the task force in June 12th, requesting ADS for future task force sessions, and we received emails from different members that I summarized and collected here. In the third slide, we're gonna see start seeing the results. The first response we received was from Mr. James Riley. He recommended to have DPI address the questions that parking planning had, and I believe this is the result of previous conversations in the task force, and this is tied to a presentation that was made by parking planning, if I recall correctly, in June as well, here in the task force. Mrs. Andrea Crooms, she suggested to identify topics related to how better allocate cost of infrastructure and how we can prioritize resilience. I believe that this topic was sort of covered in the September sessions. She also mentioned that in her intervention on last September session. She would like to hear about opportunities to improve public transportation in the county, solar development process, what can we do to improve the process on the book of our grandfathering development, where they cannot meet the current expectations. I emailed her, asking her for more information about this. She would like to know whether we can change how properties are developed, changing grading regulations so that the land is not clear cut and then soil and trees put back. And she also had questions about stormwater management evaluation process. This is she suggested DPI to present this stormwater management evaluation process. Mr. Ron Ways, he mentioned that although this task force already discussed in the past AFPOs, he would like to the task force to present a recommendation on how to mitigate the large and ever increasing lack of adequate public facilities. A little bit that we just discussed a minute ago. And he would like to suggest touch on economic development. He would like to invite speakers such as David Lanucci, and other heads of agencies responsible for providing facilities needed to support economic development. Mr. Walter Simmons, he suggested he suggested to discuss workforce development. Currently, the county doesn't have a staffing nor a talent pipeline to align with our economic goals. He touched base on this in the previous session as well, and we are thinking about including chair an item for the upcoming agenda for a presentation from Mr. Simmons on this. Yes, I discussed with him if we could bring it this session, but unfortunately he could not attend, so we're trying to get it in the agenda for November. And our previous parking planning members, Scott and Kier, they suggested to do a presentation on Plan 2035 that I believe Tony did in March, and he would say that he suggested that after this presentation, the topics that we could cover would be climate action plan, a report from the Blue Ribbon Commission on addressing the structural deficit, and he suggested to invite ULI Washington to present a panel on challenges to transit-oriented development in Prince George County. And these are their recommendations. And Mrs. Evelyn Hogan, she suggested a couple of topics that I listed all of them to make sure they are very well covered.
Sorry for the long list.
No, I think the more the merrier. Do you want to summarize? If not, I can take it.
So I guess, well, I don't know. I was kind of new to the committee, and I did this in July, and I was trying to read the plan and kind of come up with issues, and this was basically it. Some of these, the water and sewer infrastructure is big issue, and anything after COVID-19 in terms of what's happening in the county, if anything has changed from Plan 2035 and how we move forward. Impact of climate change, what's the heat island impacts, flash flooding, etc., on facilities that we have, agriculture and homes and properties. The impact of health impact assessments that are currently being completed by the health department on development projects. And I know the health officer wanted me to talk about bike lanes in terms of commuter as opposed to just strictly leisure. That we've got a few employees within the health department that bike that actually have to, they want to come from the northern part of the county to go to the south, they have to go through DC and Virginia and come back in again. So if there's discussion about that, and that may be summarizing it.
Perfect. And that's a recap. Those are all the input we received from the members.
There's a lot of great ideas in there, and Evelyn, I like a lot of yours. What's the task force think about what we should prioritize, including things that are not on the list? Let me turn to Ms. Hall.
So
since we need your help for a lot of this.
Sure. So one thing we can do is we can go through our Plan 2035 document, and if it's at the pleasure of the chair and the task force, we can come back and try to see if there's a way for us to start to prioritize it from policies. I know that we provided an update on how we're doing on certain efforts in Plan 2035. One thing I do want to share is that we're working on our master plan of transportation. So hopefully next year we'll be able to start talking about more connected bike facilities as we're trying to update our document, which was last updated in 2009. So I know for sure that's something that we're working on. I know also I've been hearing a lot about health impact assessments. And so that's something that I think is something that we should also prioritize. And we just talked about the agritourism as well. So those are like three things I saw that's jumping out based on today's conversation.
Other ideas to add to those?
Evelyn didn't mention these two bullets, but I think the second to last and third to last bullets are really important about, thinking differently about where services get located, and the idea of co-locating makes a lot of sense from an infrastructure standpoint, amenity standpoint, an access standpoint. And then the mobility issue, we have an aging population, we have healthcare deserts, food deserts, and so I don't know if mobility options for those kinds of things fits into the transportation plan or if that's separate, but I think those are critical issues for the county.
There's one of the things I like the third to last bullet, but from a budgetary standpoint, the way things come together, I know that that's been done in a couple of places with libraries, with other services. We have so few
Rec centers, another example.
Schools and rec centers is actually an excellent one. When you get into daycare and senior centers, at least daycare, it's more private, and I think it's probably worth the conversation as to how to do this. But it's my experience of these things kind of come separately. I mean, just timing wise, they come separately, and if they're government funded, then they come real separately. So I know with the Hydesville Library, I think that worked out well, and I think this was an issue with updating the Bowie Library because it's right next to the high school. And I think they tried to get some cross-pollination there. One of the things that jumps out at me, this is a combination of what Evelyn had on the first bullet, making sure that the water and sewer infrastructure can support infill development. And I think if you go back to Ms. Crooms, she has her last bullet, how stormwater management MEP evaluation process works. I think they dovetail. Maybe I'm wrong. Ms. Shoulders might be able to the very last bullet under Ms. Crooms and the first bullet for Ms. Hoban. They're both about storm. Yeah, that's stormwater. That's what I assumed.
That process, that's a deep dive question on how they determine that. They do kind of spell that out in the code though, because you have environmental site design, and if you can't, you have, well, this is of course, the last time I read the ordinance. I may need to read it again.
I think the
that was passed is that you have to, you know, you're not using any of the environmental site design best practices. I think you have to kind of justify why you have to go to best practice. But we don't see, we see mostly ESD and
okay. I thought the key word that she had was transparency.
but that, yeah, but that's a question like their process because they have the
And maybe the question is bringing DPI in to talk about this. But I think
they do. I do know their process involves notifying. Sorry, I'm very sorry about that. Yeah, I do believe their process does involve notifying, you know, adjacent abutting property owners in the area of that. I think when it was updated, it required that. But again, let me stop asking. I need to say you should defer to DPI. that's the only right answer.
right, but the thought might be we bring them in to talk about this. But the other question, I guess, who's this? Department of the Environment? Ms. Hoban's first bullet, water and sewer infrastructure. Just, what are you looking at for that? That's something you guys see as a problem?
So if we are encouraging infill development as opposed to moving outward, we need to make sure that the public water and sewer lines are present to support that development. There's some areas inside the Beltway are in category 3 for public service, but do not have the water and sewer lines present. So that is a WSSC question. And the health department and DPI work with WSSC on that issue.
Ms. Shirley Branch, she's in DPI?
Yes.
I mean, she's the keeper of the water and sewer. She's been there for the longest time. I would have assumed that we had all that infrastructure, so that's actually news to me. That would be good to get a briefing. So I guess the question would be, do we bring in WSSC to talk about this, or do we bring in Ms. Branch, or both?
Both.
I would recommend
I
Ms.
would
Branch
recommend
because she manages the water and sewer change amendments, which the council approves whether or not you know, applications can convert to public water and sewer.
Yeah, I'm just completely surprised that we have inside the Beltway category 3 that does not have the infrastructure.
So, excuse me, but I saw a study not that long ago that listed a backlog in this county of unfunded existing problems with water, sewer, and stormwater infrastructure. Am I mistaken? It was a pretty big number. I mean, it was on the billion-dollar scale.
Do you remember what
It was Jim Gracie and wrote it. He's now passed away. About a 5-year-old study that went county by county. And Prince George's County was listed with having a significant backlog of unfunded or, you know, backlog. I don't know what else to call it. Stuff that was built that needs to upgrade or needs to be maintained that isn't funded currently. Is that even on the radar screen?
do any of you know about this?
I'll be glad to
Can you
pick
find
up
it?
the study. I mean, it's,
Do you have it
legit.
handy, you think?
pardon me?
Do you think you have it handy?
I don't have it on me, but I mean, I could go back to my emails and I could take a look at it. I mean, I can
We're
certainly
talking
supply it.
infrastructure. That's our middle name here.
Well, let me put it another way. Is anyone here under the impression that we are fully current with existing infrastructure repairs and maintenance?
No, but I would have thought for the water and sewer,
Okay.
we certainly pay enough and we raise the rates high enough. I just assume that when development projects come before us for water and sewer approval, they get the category change, I assume that for them to move forward and be developed, they have to put in the water and sewer infrastructure.
I was talking more about the stormwater infrastructure, ponds, culverts, and various other stuff that the county currently owns. That
Well, I
needs
know
to be
we have
upgraded
the,
and maintained.
what's it? I can't recall the name of it. We do have an obligation to spend about $1 billion, which we've been spending. Who does the, handles our stormwater management retrofit program?
I would check with DPI. DOE does some stream restoration to address it, but I
We have a
think,
contract with a big consultant that.
the Clean Water Partnership. I think that's what
It's
it
Clean
is.
Water Partnership, and there's a company that we pay,
Is it
yes,
Corvius?
Corvus, no, Corvius?
Something like that.
Yeah, I think that's probably what you're talking about, so you're correct. If you could pull that and get us that
No,
information.
I'll pick it up. I mean, it's kind of in my wheelhouse at Riverkeeper, but
Yeah, this comes up under Department of the Environment.
Yes.
They're the ones, because this comes out of
Yeah.
the Stormwater Management Fund
Yeah.
to pay for this, Corvius.
They actually they're still doing work. I see their feed on social media. So DOE would be that source for that.
Something that we just dawned on me that related to all this that we need to get a briefing on, because this is becoming more and more obvious. Updating the floodplain analysis. I know DPI has done some stuff, and they I think back in last July, they updated the technical manual or the technical report that they put out. But you can just see with all the most recent storms in the last 3-4 years around the country, we've got some serious changes in the environment. I'm not sure. So I think it'd be useful to find out how current is their analysis of the data that they're using when they decide where the floodplain exists and what a property owner needs to do to build in the floodplain. I know Ms. Crooms would say don't build in the floodplain and don't get the do the mitigation, but I think people still apply for that. It would be very important to get the current input from DPI as to how they're evaluating, what data they're using, and how current it is or forward-looking it is. Ms. Hall?
And so, Chair, what I'm hearing is that our partner agencies, definitely, we would love to have them here as part of the conversation. Keeping in mind there is sustainable development ways for us to also move forward development, because as you can imagine, up and down the eastern seaboard, we're running into problems with floodplaining issues, sea level rising. So we also want to do low impact development. We want to really see what we can do to leverage some of those resources here, because flooding also happens in areas that are not floodplain areas. So I do want to make sure that we're being very strategic as we're looking forward and looking at mitigating some of those impacts. And we're happy to work with our partner agencies on that.
But trust me, I think most of the council members are well aware of backyard flooding that has nothing to do with rivers. Mr. Burroughs' predecessor, Ms. Anderson Walker, was very big on this topic, and this is actually something that I think policy-wise we need to think about. Everywhere you go, I go around my district and I see someone's paved their front yard, backyard, and then we wonder why most of these houses were built prior to stormwater management at all. Land is settled, people have paved their yards, and now everyone's backyards are flooding and their basements are flooding, and it's like, why is this happening now? It never happened before. And we have a Board of Appeals that occasionally grants lot coverage variances. It also comes up in the concept of alternative dwelling units, whatever the proper term is. The ADUs.
Accessory dwelling units.
Accessory.
Yeah. And so I think, and so this is a great conversation, because I know that the Green Build Conference is coming up pretty soon in a couple of weeks in Philadelphia. And so I'm going to go there as well, because I can imagine from a green building standpoint, we want to make sure all of our buildings are sustainable. And to your point, that we don't want to have pervious issues across the county.
So December's topic will be your report on the.
I am more than happy, and I'm happy because I'm LEED certified, so I'm more than happy to touch on what I've learned at the Philadelphia conference. Thank you so much.
So are you silver, gold, or platinum certified?
I'm AP. But I'm definitely happy to have more conversations with our partner agencies on this.
Okay, so we have a lot of topics. Ms. Gomez is writing furiously. Maybe when Ms. Gomez gets done writing and types it up, we can send it out and then we can essentially vote on which ones we want to do next. I think Mr. Simmons should probably be one of the topics for our next meeting. Speaking of, I have one more thing to bring up. When's our next meeting? It's in November.
It's November the 18th at 3:30 p.m.
That's Monday. Okay.
Yes, sir. Monday.
Oh, great. And the last item I wanted to bring up was another one from Ms. Hoban. I thought was really good. Impact of climate change on Heat Island impacts flash flooding facilities, soil temperatures, agriculture. It probably fits under something else or partners with some other topic, but it's something I think we should include. I guess the question is, who can speak to these issues? They sound somewhat technical, if not entirely technical, but I'm curious, do we know how these climate change, the aspects of climate change are directly impacting the county at this time or looking forward?
Who's heading up the climate plan that's been
Yeah, we have Mary Abe and is Hawkins Nixon for doing it.
through planning or
Through DOE.
DOE.
We will definitely be willing to work with Director Crooms on that effort. So more than happy to help her out if there's something that we can partner with.
Okay. So did you get that one? That's Ms. Hoban's fifth bullet. Okay. Any other thoughts?
Too many things to choose from.
There really are. Well, it's coming up on 5 o'clock. We never got our quorum. Ms. Hightower?
Chair, we would need to start scheduling additional meetings. We do not have a meeting scheduled in December, so that I can check with the clerk and start getting that.
I guess one of the questions, we normally meet.
We usually meet the third Monday of each month, and we can keep that schedule with the meeting starting at 3:30 if that's amenable to all parties.
Well, the question I want to ask is, what's the third Monday of December? The 16th. Are we going to have a quorum? Do the folks want to meet in December or hold till January?
How much longer are we going? It just seems like we've got so much to cover. We shouldn't be skipping months unless we absolutely have to.
I think this task force meets for 5 or 6 years.
It's
Fine,
an ongoing.
signed up for that one.
You're not required. But yeah, it was set up. I would go into history. It was set up to do a couple things, and one was to look at building permit allocation program, and then follow that through to see how that was working. But that kind of went by the boards because that didn't quite get implemented the way we thought. So at the moment, we're just learning as much as we can about all the infrastructure challenges, which are many. And then we're supposed to report back to the council on things the council should be doing. So we'll do December 16th, 3:30, right here.
Holiday party right after that.
Very possible. The council does a holiday party, but usually it's probably the 12th or 19th. It's usually on a Thursday, so they can give everybody Friday off. Okay, anything else, Ms. Hightower?
No, sir, I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Okay, so we will adjourn the meeting and we'll look for Ms. Gomez to give us the list, and then we'll share that around and see what we can put together. But we'll have Mr. Simmons as our plan for at least the first half of December 16th meeting. All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you.